morning, Victoria. How are you today?
Hi, thank you, Lily. Yeah, good. Sun's shining. It's all good. So nice to be here. Really excited to talk to people today.
Thank you so much for making the time to speak with us and the young people watching. First off, we have a few questions for you, and then we'll move on to our student Q&A, if that's okay.
Sure.
Great. So our first question is, so that the young people listening can get to know you, please can you tell us more about your career journey and your current role?
Absolutely. So as you said, I obviously went and studied law as a degree at university, and went and trained at a media law firm. I think when I was at university, I got to the end of my third year and got a little bit disillusioned with the law. You have a lot of big corporate law firms that come around and talk to you when you're doing law degrees. I'd gone into the law because I thought I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. I suppose at the beginning of my university career, I realised maybe that wasn't for me. But having all these big kind of law firms come in, I also realised that corporate law was not really what I wanted to do. I went into these law firms and they were quite stuffy and wearing suits and all of this kind of stuff. And yes, I kind of thought, I'm not sure this is for me, but then I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I had a little bit of a kind of crisis of confidence. And I'd signed up to go and do an internship in New York. And in the interim, while I had a bit of kind of time, I actually went to Ibiza. I ended up in a nightclub chatting away to somebody who worked at Ministry of Sound. And I just kind of said off the cuff, got any jobs? And he was like, yeah, give me a call. So I did, and I did some work experience there in the marketing department. They had a little legal team, and I think a few of them were away. And because I'd done a law degree, they were like, hey, do you want to come and have a look at this? Maybe do some deal summaries. And this was my first kind of exposure to, well, hang on, there's another type of law that's kind of interesting and is around music, which is something I'd loved for such a long time. And so it really kind of flipped my mindset. And I thought, actually, yeah, I do want to do law. I just don't want to do that law. There's other law specialities that I could work in. So when I went to New York, I was then applying for training contracts, which are like a 2-year process. You kind of apply 2 years before you start. And I only applied to media firms, and was very kind of committed that that's what I was going to do. And if I didn't get into that, then I was maybe going to have to think of a different path. So thankfully I did get a training contract at Harbot and Lewis, which is a great firm, great media firm, and really got me exposed to that. I went on secondment while I was there to Virgin Atlantic for 6 months, and it's there that I kind of saw the in-house world. So even though a media law firm is less stuffy than a big corporate law firm, it still is a law firm. And again, I thought, okay, this is maybe more interesting, more on the business side. And so when my training contract was up, and I would only have wanted to qualify into the music team, and there wasn't space there, I started to look around and got this opportunity at Capital Radio, which is now Global Radio, which was super fun, vibrant. I used to get involved in so much stuff, like advertising, crazy marketing campaigns that people would want to do. Bands would be coming in and recording, and we'd have to go through the legal stuff for that. And so I kind of felt like I'd found my feet. Then an opportunity came up very kind of serendipitously at Ministry of Sound, which is obviously where I'd started those few years ago as a kind of intern for a couple of weeks, and that was to run their legal team. And I had 6 fabulous years there. It was obviously predominantly a record company, but a really interesting media business that did all sorts of stuff. So events, and at one point we had a fashion brand. We were making clothes. It was a really fast-paced entrepreneurial environment. I loved it. When I was there for about 6 years, I kind of felt like maybe I'd done everything that I was going to do there. And then the opportunity at SoundCloud came up, which was a music streaming service, pretty new. I was one of the first lawyers in there, and we didn't have any of the music licenses to be able to kind of start to monetize that service, even though it had been going for a while. So again, kind of crazy ride, but really fun, all hands on deck, kind of working towards a goal and getting involved in many different areas. So all the music side, the advertising side, working a lot on the tech side, which I hadn't necessarily had experience of before, which obviously then led me to being able to go and work at Twitter. And I was at Twitter for just over 5 years, and I used to look after everything for their UK business. So again, very varied. I would work on advertising and marketing and content deals, but also a lot of regulation as my kind of job evolved. And so I was learning a whole new skill about new laws coming in to kind of tackle the fast-paced moving environment of tech. And then when we started to get involved in music, I took on that responsibility globally because of my experience, previously. Obviously, Twitter changed quite a bit in the last year, had a new owner. Yes, and so I decided to leave at the end of last year. And I've been in my current role for just coming up to 3 months, and I now work at a TV company. So I kind of feel like I've taken all aspects of the media world. So it's a company called Moonbug Entertainment, and they make preschool kids TV. So things like Coco Melon, Blippi, and a bunch of other things like that, which you'll know if you've got young people in your household. And I look after the commercial side and the music side, and now actually we're about to get into gaming, and I'm going to take over that, which is not something that I've been part of before. So again, really excited to just keep learning and working.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that overview of your career to date. I have a follow-on question for you, Victoria. How important is it to be continually learning in your career, and yeah, can you share that with the students?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love. There are a lot of jobs that you just do the same thing day in, day out, or you're quite siloed. And in work, and in very big organisations, I think you can just work on one particular topic. I've thankfully and very gratefully never had that, and so to do that now would be really strange. And it just keeps things interesting. So once you feel like you know something else comes on. And being in the media music world, the technology is constantly changing, so you have to be able to adapt. And so it's very rewarding for me. It means I never get bored, because there's always something happening. But even in the things that you think you know about, that changes and things evolve. And so you've got to keep learning. It's the only way, I think, to be able to really survive.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And Victoria, we were introduced to you via our partnership with Moving the Needle. Can you tell us more about Moving the Needle and why it's important to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, Moving the Needle is an organisation that is there to empower and mentor women in the music industry. So it was started a few years ago by an absolute powerhouse of women who all have kind of gone through different careers in the music industry in different areas, but all face the same kind of things. You know, the music industry's been, when I started, there weren't huge amount of female role models really at the top, very male dominated industry. And you know, you didn't necessarily know where to go to kind of navigate these things. I think another real big part of it is a bit like me not knowing that there's a whole world in law that's music related. I think lots of people don't understand there's thousands of careers that you can do within the music industry. It's not just, you know, singing on a record. And a lot of those jobs are still quite male heavy, like engineering, producing, mixing. And so what we really want to do is be able to be there as a support network and an advisory network to be able to show people what the options are, give them like potential skills on how to get into it, and then help them navigate the issues that happen. So that, you know, we have a lot of women leave the music industry when they have kids or when they're older, going through the menopause, and it's like, why is that? Is it because, you know, they don't have that support network, and they think, well, if I'm a touring agent and I'm out on the road for 6 months a year, how can I do that when I've got a family? And so that's why I love working with Moving the Needle. You know, we've got such amazing women there to help bring the new generation up and hopefully do better than we did.
Thanks, Victoria. And we'll post a link to Moving the Needle in the chat shortly.
Right.
Our next question is, did you have any idea what you wanted to be when you were younger, or perhaps at school? I know that you said, you know, you wanted to be a criminal lawyer, but how did you get to that decision whilst you were young?
Yeah, it's I mean, I suppose when I was younger, I wanted to be a writer. Then I probably wanted to be a pop star. Madonna had a huge influence on me. I suppose, but I've always liked that kind of creative side, acting. So I maybe thought I'd always kind of do something like that. But I liked school, and I suppose was always worried that that career would have been a bit not necessarily stable. I actually wanted to get into, I decided to get into law because my parents got divorced. They were in court a lot for many things for a while. And I became fascinated by just the courtroom and the lawyers and the barristers. I'm sure some TV shows like LA Law had something to do with it as well, like seeing all these people in these high-powered suits running around courtrooms, like saving the world. But again, I suppose I only saw kind of that criminal side of it on the TV, and I thought that would be really interesting. And I think it would still be interesting, just really hard work. And so when I was 9, I kind of decided that, and that's just kind of been it. And sometimes maybe I wish that actually I hadn't made that decision so early on, because you at a young age, especially when I was at school, you were not told about all of these jobs that were out there, jobs that, you know, when you went to the careers thing, you picked up the little piece of paper and it would say, you know, builder or writer or secretary, probably back when, and it's just like, well, what about all these other jobs? And as you get older, you realize, wow, there's like copywriters and people that make advertising and people that make the TV shows, which you obviously you were watching, but you never thought, oh yeah, there's got to be like 100 people making that show. And I do enjoy the law, you know, I actually do enjoy it, and thankfully I found a way to incorporate some of my other loves into doing what I do.
Fantastic, thank you. Our next question is, what do you think your younger self would be most surprised about your career?
I think they'd be surprised that I come to work in trainers and a pair of jeans, because you know, going into all those big law firms and just seeing a lot of suits, I think I thought I'd have a much bigger suit collection than I do. And I think they would have been really surprised that I'm working in the music industry, because I think I would have thought that I'm going to be a lawyer, and that was a very boxed off idea of what a lawyer was. And so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
Absolutely, thank you. And following on from that, what do you enjoy most about being a lawyer? And do you need to enjoy the job that you do?
I think it's really important to enjoy the job you do, because then it's not work. I think that's you know, that's a saying that's been said a lot, and I think it's true. I mean, obviously it's always going to be work. There's always going to be some things that you don't love to do, but if you actually enjoy it, then it makes the time go a lot quicker. What do I love about it? I mean, I love that I'm constantly trying to find solutions to problems that people don't know. I love kind of knowing or like having the conviction to know something. I always liked that when I was younger. I used to love going into shops and being able to tell them what the Sale of Goods Act said, you know, if they wouldn't return something. You know, so I like being a bit of a know-it-all. So law's a good one. But what I love about my job now and being in-house rather than in a firm is really getting to understand a business and building those relationships with people that work there, and learning about stuff that's not law related. You know, a lot of the stuff I do is not strictly like, can you tell me what the law says? It's much more about problem solving, finding creative solutions to problems, trying to work out what actually is the risk of doing something. You know, are we prepared to take that? And so it's not black and white anymore. It's much more of a collaborative thing, working with people in business who are really creative, and I love that.
Thank you. And just so the young people listening today can understand, what's the difference between an in-house legal team and a law firm?
Sure. So a law firm is they've got many lawyers specializing in different things, and as a client you would call them and say, hi, I need help with this contract, can you do it? And they would come in, assist on that piece of work, charge you for that, and then go away effectively. As an in-house lawyer, you are that, but you've only got one client. So a law firm would have many clients, but as an in-house lawyer, you've got, well, I say one client, you've got one business that's the client, but you have many different clients within that business. And so you still have that kind of push and pull sometimes. But you work solely for that business and advise that business on whatever your area of expertise is. And the best thing about being in-house, in my opinion, is you're involved in things from an earlier stage and for a longer stage. So whereas at a law firm, they might say, right, we've agreed this deal, can you just basically write it? As an in-house lawyer, they'd come and say, hey, we're going to talk to so-and-so about this. And you'd be like, okay, great. And they'd show you the creative, maybe of an ad or of a song. And you'd say, oh, okay, well, I'm not sure about that song because it sounds a bit like that song, so I'm not sure you should do that. Or you'd say, oh, well, that advert looks as if it's going to potentially breach this regulation, so maybe we can change it. And so you're much more involved in the process. And then yes, you'll draft the paperwork at the end of the day and negotiate it, but that's kind of a little bit of a sideshow compared to actually like working with the business.
Thank you. So you're brought in sort of so much earlier on in those conversations, which is fascinating. Thank you. Our next question is, what do you think are the top 3 skills and 2 values a young person may need to know and have who wants to study law?
Yes. I think communication skills is probably the key thing. I think, lawyers are known to be use too many words, not be very, kind of live in this cloud of secrecy as to what we do, and it shouldn't really be like that. I think you need to be able to talk to people that don't understand what you do or what the law is. And you have to be able to get the right information out of them to be able to advise. So you have to be able to ask the right questions, build that rapport, have that relationship that they'll bring you in early on, and then give you the information you need so that you're fully prepared to give them an answer. And then you have to be able to give them that answer in a way that they understand and not make it complicated. And so that's, I think, skill number 1. I think communication is definitely key. If communication breaks down, it's really hard to be able to do your job properly. What else? I think attention to detail is obviously very important. You have to want to be able to go through words, documents, find the things that are important, forget about the things that aren't important, and so I think that's another really big one. And then another skill, I think, like commercial acumen. So again, like there's a lot of lawyers could just tell you what the law says, but that doesn't really help a client as to what they want to do. You have to make sure that you can see what somebody wants to do and then take what's the law and adapt it and to that situation and provide specific advice on that specific thing, and also be able to assess the risk. So something the law might say, well, you can't do this, but when you look at it, it's like, well, is it actually going to happen? If it does happen, what does that mean? I mean, obviously, if you're talking about something criminal, that's a different matter. But if you're talking about something in the commercial sense, you might go, actually, we can do it because what we're going to get out of it is much bigger than what the potential risk might be. So I think those are skills. And then values. I mean, as a lawyer, I think ethical values, obviously massive. You have to, even though I'm saying you're assessing risk and seeing where you draw the lines, but you still have to make sure that you're ethical and that you stay within, you don't do things that push you beyond what is ethically acceptable. And obviously you take an oath when you're a lawyer and all of that, and it is important. And honesty, I think, making sure that you are being straight, and sometimes commercial people will push you for stuff, and I think it's just being strong and knowing that you've got this ethical and honest base to work from.
Thank you so much. So now is the time we'll move on to our student Q&A. We've had a question, Victoria, come in asking you to describe what a typical day in your role looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because there are no real typical days, but I mean, some days I am drafting a lot more, so actually kind of drafting contracts. Sometimes I'm looking at policy, so looking at laws coming down the line and going, okay, how's this going to affect our business? And so doing like notes to various people around the business about what this might mean or what we might have to change. Meetings with either internal people or external people about how what we're doing, or negotiating a contract. It's a real mix. You know, some days I'm sat at my desk all day typing away on my computer, and some days I don't sit down because I'm kind of going from one meeting to the other. So it really does depend. And thankfully I've got, again, this broad remit. So one day I might do a lot of music work, and the next day I might be working solely on advertising. Or so it is a real variety. There is no real typical day.
Thank you so much. Our next question has come in from the Thomas Alleyne Academy. They want to know a bit more about how to become a specialist lawyer in the entertainment industry, and perhaps we could expand a bit more on what a training contract is.
Sure. So I think things are changing now because I am old, but I think you can get into law in a different way now. I think there's a thing called the SQE, and so you can train on the job. You can do a lot of your training on the job. But back when I did it, you would have to, once you finished your law degree, or you didn't even have to do a law degree, to be fair. You could do a different degree, and then you could do a conversion of a year to get the thing that you needed on the law side. And then you would go and do what they call a vocational course. So if you want to be a solicitor, so a solicitor is what I am, and that is where you work directly with clients, drafting things. And then the other type of law is a barrister, and they're the ones that kind of wear the wigs and gowns most of the time. And so they don't necessarily have that relationship with the client directly. They're kind of brought in for their specialism and usually appear in court. But both ways, you have to do a vocational course, which was, in my case, called the legal practice course, and that was a year. And it's studying, but it's much more practical. It's kind of real life scenarios and giving advice rather than the kind of books. And then you had to do a 2-year training course, which is when you find a firm who kind of sponsors you effectively, and then puts you through the firm through different departments. So I did a property seat, I did a seat at Virgin Atlantic, I did a music seat, and I think I did a litigation seat as well. You do 6 months in each of those, and it's supposed to give you an all-round training of what it's like to be a lawyer. And you're not fully qualified until the end of that stage. As I said, now I think you can do more work. If you go and work in a company in a legal department, you can use that time that you work there to kind of take chunks of that time off, and then you're fully qualified.
Wow, thank you so much. I've certainly learned a lot this morning. Victoria, our next question is what have you overcome any challenges in your role, and how have you overcome them?
I mean, there's always challenges. Like dealing with people can be challenging, especially senior people who are very driven to do things. I think that's probably where the biggest challenge is, and that's in every role, to be fair. There are always big characters that are pushing you to do stuff quickly, get things done. And again, I think it comes back to communication. I think the only way you can really manage situations like that is being able to communicate and being strong in yourself as well. I think to push back sometimes, even if they are more senior people, and the way to do that, I think, is to explain why something might not be able to happen in the time frame that people are giving you. So it all comes down to communication. And trying to find a way through. I think just trying to find a solution. So it's all skills that you need as a lawyer, but I think work across any job effectively.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And on the flip side to that, what's been a career highlight for you and why?
I mean, there's been lots, I suppose. There's been lots of career highlights. I think probably SoundCloud and being able to really launch that music service, kind of starting something from, I mean, it wasn't complete scratch because obviously the service had been going, but we weren't monetizing it. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have any deals. And working on that for like the first 2 odd years of my time there was just solely trying to get that up and running. And when we did, it was a big highlight. So I think that is definitely a career highlight.
Thank you. What's the best piece of career advice you've ever received?
That's a good question. What's the best piece of career advice? I think just be curious, like be interested. Never look at something and think, oh God, that's not worth my time, or that's not something I'm interested in, because I think you just don't know what's gonna appear, that you don't know what you don't know. So I think it's important to really, especially when you're younger and you've got the opportunity, to just get out there and try everything, try and experience as much as you can, and listen to people, like really just listen to people, what they're doing, what they're up to, try and think whether you'd have an interest in something there, and ask people questions. I think, you know, people are always happy to talk to you, generally, I would say. And when I was younger, I always felt like, you know, these people were up here, and how could I sit and go and ask them about something? I think younger kids are better at this these days, but ask questions, and just ask someone if you can grab a coffee with them if you're interested in what they do. I think people love to see enthusiasm in others, and are usually always quite happy to talk about themselves. So use that and make the most of it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I love the sort of simple advice of be curious and continually learn about everything that you can. I guess my next question for you, Victoria, is what can the young people who are listening today do at school or outside of school to help them in the world of work?
I think it's just, you know, find things that you're interested in, and then learn about them, try and get experience in that world. And that can be anything. It doesn't have to be in the big firm. You know, if you're interested in music, get experience in a, you know, working in a, like when you're older, obviously, but in a club, or organising band stuff at school, or just something that kind of keeps you in a world that you're interested. But then when you are going to employers, you can show them that you've got some experience in that world, but also more that you're interested and you're ambitious and you're trying to gain experience in that, and that might kind of put you above others. But also don't worry too much about necessarily what you know grades you get at school. I think there's so much pressure on that. I think try and live a kind of rounded life of experience, because I think experience can sometimes be more important than just kind of all about the grades. I think it's you know, experience is good, I think.
Thank you. And coming back a bit, you've got so many years experience as a lawyer within the music and entertainment industry. How did you know that this was the right career for you? Was there a moment where you were like, right, this is it, this is 100% for me?
I think that internship at Ministry, I think it was a real light bulb moment. I just thought, this is something I love doing anyway. I'd go to gigs, I'd always be doing things like that. I found the law interesting as well. Like copyright law to me is really, really interesting. So, and I loved understanding how a song breaks down. You know, how there's so many different rights in one song. How everyone just listens to a song and thinks one person owns it, but you know, 8 people could have written it, then somebody else has recorded it, then someone else has sung it, then someone else has mixed it, someone else has produced it, and all those people have rights. And it's like, well, how do you manage that? How do you work that out if something goes wrong, or if someone wants to sell a bit of theirs, and how is that? So it was fascinating to me. So I think it was like, I thought that, yeah, this is good, and I could be myself as again, going back to like not having that stuffy, like being in a law firm, which was not really for me. And you know, I went to a state school, and it was all very very different world. And I just thought I can be me, I can have a personality, and I can do a job that I enjoy. And so that was a real light bulb moment for me.
Thank you. I'm sure the young people listening today would like to know a bit more about the different roles within your team that you work with currently. Maybe something that they might have never heard of.
Yeah, sure. So I've got a team. So I've got two lawyers in my specific team, but I've also got a rights and clearance manager. So that person is not a legal person, but works on seeing what rights in the musical tracks that we own we have, manages where we've got the rights. So we might only have the rights in some countries, but not other countries. And then if we're going to do a new song or a new nursery rhyme, as it is now, you know, she will be able to go and search as to whether or not that song already exists, if it's in the public domain, which means that anybody can use it because it's so old, or whether there's restrictions on it. And so she's not a legal person, but she works within that industry, and also will sometimes search for music. So someone might say, we're doing a show on vegetables or something, and she might go and search for songs that have a vegetable theme that we might be able to use. So it's a very, very different role from a pure legal one, but very important.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. Thank you. I guess my next question, Victoria, might be quite hard to answer, but AI is in all of our minds at the moment. How do you think that will impact the future of your industry?
Yeah, oh my God. I mean, I literally get asked a question about AI about 5 times a day. So I mean, this is it. This is why it's such an interesting part of the business. It's like when streaming started. I remember being at Ministry of Sound when kind of Spotify started, and everyone was like, what is going on? And I remember when I was in New York, Napster had been created, and everyone, I mean, I was 20 odd then, and I was like, this is a whole new world. I mean, AI is obviously here to stay, but is, yeah, incredibly fascinating as to what it's going to mean for creative industries. So I think, I mean, what we're saying is obviously you can't really use AI and then create something and think that you own that 100%. So when you're in a copyright business like we are, where you have things like TV shows or whatever that you want to own, be very difficult to find out that you actually don't own a bit of it because you stuck something into ChatGPT and it pumped out a script for you. So, but it's obviously not going away. And I think the difficult thing for the music industry is a lot of the time it's not even a copy. It's actually it is a newly created work that isn't using that clip from Drake or whatever. So how do you actually police it? And so I think the courts, well, they're already starting to have cases, and there's going to be a lot of case law around it, and it's different in different jurisdictions as well. So a rule, you know, you might have copyright in something in the UK, but you don't in the US. So how does that work when you've got a global business? It's fascinating, and we're all scrambling to try and work out what it means for our business, how we can use it in some ways, because it is a great tool for some things. And so it's like, well, could we use it for this, like translations? Maybe would probably be fine, but not use it to create TV shows or music. So.
Yes, absolutely. I guess what sparked the question from me anyway was I heard a popular song that came out recently that was AI had used Frank Sinatra's voice, and I was like, how is this possible? It was incredible. So I guess lots to consider, and it certainly felt like it landed just instantly. Here's AI, here's ChatGPT, off we go. But thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you, Victoria. I guess final kind of question, putting yourself back into when you started university, what advice would you have for someone who may not know what specialism they want starting a law course?
Yeah, I think do what you enjoy. I think do what you enjoy. So I chose modules at uni that I thought I would enjoy. And have a basis. So I think there's if you're interested in criminal law, obviously it's quite clear. If you think you're going to go into commercial law, do the basics of like kind of contract and company and the things that will give you a good starting block. And then try and find some work experience in different things, to test it out, and see whether those areas might interest you. There's medical law. I mean, there's so many different specialisms that people don't necessarily know. So I think you just need to do a little bit of digging as to what's around, but also what interests you. I really think that is kind of key to be able to once you find something you enjoy, and then you can put a skill that you've got on top of it, it's going to make the days go much quicker and be much more enjoyable, and you'll be better at it, I think, because you understand what you're talking about, because you've got an interest in it.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I guess we've got no more questions for now. Do you have any sort of last pieces of advice or sort of closing comments for the young people listening today?
I think be curious. I think be curious about everything. Just try and keep your ears and eyes open, and take advantage of people being around and like talking to them. And don't be afraid. I think, kind of have conviction in yourself. If you're like, I really enjoy this, I think I could do it, then just follow it. And if people tell you can't, just don't listen and keep going. I see so many people that didn't start in the way that they thought they were going to start, and have got exactly where they need to be. So I think don't be too hard on yourself, and life is a long journey. It's not a sprint.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today, Victoria, and for sharing all of your knowledge and advice for the young people.